Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm KHOU 11 meteorologist Tim Pandages. While the Atlantic Basin is quiet in terms of tropical activity, the Western Pacific is really heating on up. Super Typhoon is bearing down on the U.S. territory of Guam. Now, it is the equivalent of a higher-end Category 4 hurricane if we were to use the Stafford-Simpson scale with 155-mile-per-hour winds. You can see earlier on, this is a 6-hour loop, it did have a well-defined cleared-out eye, but notice in the last couple of frames it started to kind of enclose in on itself. That's something called an eye wall replacement cycle, likely underway here, with it still being about 80 miles to the southeast of Guam. Usually when we get an eye wall replacement cycle, that does mean that it weakens slightly before a larger eye emerges and we see a period of re-strengthening occur. And this is not good as it's heading pretty much directly for Guam. 170,000 U.S. citizens live there. You have Andersen Air Force Base there. You have Naval Station Guam, a big military base out in the Pacific. So we'll be watching this carefully. Now, we do have radar from Andersen Air Force Base I'm going to show you here, and you can clearly see the center of Super Typhoon Mawar edging its way ever so slowly to the north and west. It's only moving at 7 miles per hour, so crawling off to the north and west. Things here locally, though, as I mentioned, are quiet in the Gulf of Mexico. They're quiet in the Atlantic Basin. So this is a Super Typhoon Mawar out in the Pacific. So what's the difference between that and a hurricane? Well, it all has to do with geography. That's the only difference here. They're the exact same type of storm, just called different names in different basins. So that's the only difference you're going to need to be concerned about. Here's the track, taking it pretty much over the island, the U.S. territory of Guam, here within the next 18 hours, maintaining strength, maybe getting to the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane with winds sustained at 160 miles per hour later today. Now, Guam is a very, very small island in the middle of a vast Pacific basin. It's not too often you get direct hits of super typhoons, and since records began, only 21 storms have passed within 50 miles. That's not direct landfalls. The last time that happened was back in 2002, and that storm had max winds of over 170 miles per hour, and that was the second costliest U.S. disaster that year. Now, this is early in the season, too, for Western Pacific typhoons to really get cranking and be this strong. Usually it's later in the season. The last super typhoon to hit Guam was back in December of 2002. Now, it has to do with how warm the oceans are. There's a lot of fuel out here, and at this point, just south of Guam, there's Guam right there. We've got sea surface temperatures well in excess of the 80-degree threshold we need for tropical cyclogenesis, and we've got that certainly all around the island and even more off to the north and west, moving into even more favorable conditions there. So that's the latest on Super Typhoon Mawar as it heads towards Guam and the difference between a hurricane and a typhoon.